While originally starting off as a villain for Jack Kirby's New Gods, Darkseid has since evolved into a mainstream villain thanks to his appearances in Superman the Animated Series and more recently in Justice League. But as a result of that shift, a lot, and I do mean a lot, about this guy has completely fallen to the wayside. I'm Ewan, this is What Culture Comics, and here are 10 things you didn't know about Darkseid. Number 10. He has children, all of whom hate him. In the Hall of Things, that should not be surprising. Darkseid not being the best father in the world and not being looked upon fondly by his own children is the kind of thing that would go on a big golden pedestal at the end of said hall. Let's start with the most famous example, Orion. Hating his father is arguably Orion's only actual character trait beyond being generally gruff. Then there's his adopted son Kalibak, who is obsessed with gaining his daddy's approval, but every time this comes up, it's clear that Kalibak would burn his father alive if the opportunity arose. It's what Darkseid would expect after all. And then the New 52 introduced another child of Darkseid, Grail. Darkseid had this kid with an Amazonian assassin named Marina. Grail also hates her dad as much as Orion does, but unlike Orion, she inherited her father's Omega beams, so she can actually, do something about it. Number 9. He's no match for Doomsday. You would think, considering how many times Darkseid has successfully humbled the Man of Steel himself, that even the creature most famous for killing Superman would pose about the same level of challenge. But nope, not even Darkseid can handle this grumpy, spiky boy. Darkseid was one of the first beings to encounter Doomsday, several 100,000 years before either party would even hear of Kal-El. And boy oh boy, did Doomsday leave one heck of an impression. Darkseid, ever the arrogant ass, tried playing it cool with the beast, but Doomsday just no-sold everything Darkseid threw at him and proceeded to take the new god apart piece by piece. To add insult to injury, Darkseid only lived because of the last-minute aid of Steppenwolf. Yeah, the Robin Hood-looking dude that even the Justice League movie characterizes as a complete loser, had to help the great and mighty Darkseid against what amounted to a spiky version of the Hulk. I like to imagine Darkseid just forbids anyone from ever speaking of this day ever again, on pain of torture so extreme, even Granny Goodness would go, "Yeesh man, chill out." Number 8. He was based on Jack Palance. So, it's not exactly new news to discover that Darkseid was, in part, inspired by Adolf Hitler. However, Hitler was not exactly the most imposing figure to be around physically, so where did Jack Kirby go for inspiration for Darkseid's design? Simple, he went to Jack Palance. DC fans may already know Jack Palance from his role in Batman 1989, but he was actually one of the most renowned character actors of his day, appearing in such films as Tango and Cash and TV shows like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Palance's main claim to fame was that he was very good at playing villains or imposing figures in the protagonist's life, due to a natural commanding presence he owned by birthright. From there, all Kirby had to do was take your average photo of the guy and make him look a bit alien, dress him up in Kirby-esque brightly coloured robes, and hey, Bob's your uncle. Number 7. He has a brother who also hates him. Of course, Darkseid was about as nice to his brother as he was to his children. You see, Darkseid wasn't always called Darkseid. His mum wasn't looking down at a kid and going, yeah, that's a good name that totally won't result in him getting relentlessly bullied by the other new godlings at school. We'll get more into his backstory and his true name in a later entry, but for now, just know that along with a previous identity, Darkseid also had a previous life, including a brother called Drax. No, not that one, the DC one. DC's Drax, a member of the Forever People, was screwed over pretty royally by his brother when he seized the power needed to become the cosmic tyrant we know and fear today. Fortunately, the previous wielder of the mantle of Infinity Man was around to nurse Drax back to health, and then die immediately after doing so, passing the powers onto him. This rather rude and presumptuous act was ultimately for the best, as it gave Drax the ability to effectively fight back against his insane brother. Number 6. his Omega beams can send people through time. You know, you're a badass and one of the few times you died required one of the most evil beings in all of comics to come down to Earth and finish you off himself. The legendarily confusing finale behind Final Crisis had one part that was actually pretty lucid. Batman confronting Darkseid to take him out with the same kind of bullet that killed Orion at the beginning of the comic. Because when you're up against someone who has enslaved the entire planet and soon the whole universe along with it, one dude's oath to never kill doesn't really hold water when all of creation is, you know, in the balance. Batman does manage to get that one vital hit off on Darkseid, but not before the Lord of Apokolips takes him down with his Omega beams. Except not really, as we learn at the end of Final Crisis and in the pages of Grant Morrison's Batman series that the Dark Knight was just sent back in time by the beams. Turns out Darkseid was using Batman as a pseudo-time bomb, infusing him with the Omega Sanction and sending him back so that when he blows up, he'll take the entire multiverse with it. If that sounds confusing, it's only because it is. Welcome to Grant Morrison. Number 5. He ran his own club. There's a lot of weird in Final Crisis, as it was essentially DC just letting Grant Morrison make a crisis event while also letting them be as completely off the wall insane as they wanted to. And good God, did they call DC's bluff there. As you can imagine, it's easy to forget a lot of what happens in the pages of this maxi series, seeing as how it gives you something else to occupy your head rent-free every third page. So just as a quick reminder, the new gods in this story turned into humans, and Darkseid was a cult leader and club owner, because of course he was. Darkseid was reborn as Boss Darkseid, owner of the Darkseid Club, and the mastermind behind all the goings-on in the story. He had to lay low as Boss Darkseid because he had finally attained the anti-life equation that he'd been searching for his eternal life, and he needed time to test it out before trotting it out into the climax in Final Crisis. Number 4. His first appearance was in an issue of Jimmy Olsen. The funny thing about putting a writer or artist on multiple projects at the same time is that release schedules can really play funny tricks on you. For example, if, say, Jack Kirby were put on 2 projects at once and decided to tease a villain he was releasing in one series within the pages of the other, which one was released first would drastically impact the effect of said tease. So, yeah, anyway, Darkseid's very first appearance was in an issue of Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. Specifically, issue number 134, where Superman and Jimmy had to deal with a one-off villain named Morgan Edge. At the end of the story, we learn that Morgan was a field agent for Darkseid the whole time. One would think that Darkseid would choose someone a touch more competent than a person called Morgan freaking Edge, but cut him some slack, okay? This was his first appearance. Only natural he make a few mistakes. A month later, the first issue of the New Gods would come out, featuring the proper first appearance of Darkseid. Number 3. He once worked with the Justice League. It's hard to imagine Darkseid, like, ever working with the good guys. Villains have joined the side of good before, but the Lord of Apokolips carries a certain stigma that would normally just make it far too awkward to consider. That was before Cosmic Odyssey and then later Justice League Odyssey, of course. The respective premises of both books dealt with teams of heroes forming their own intergalactic version of the Justice League in order to deal with a rising cosmic threat. Justice League Odyssey, arguably an homage to the classic Cosmic Odyssey maxi series, shares the plot point of Darkseid being put on his back foot and needing the good guys' help. Darkseid formed an alliance with the Intergalactic League that could be very generously described as uneasy. Of course, it was all a plot by the evil new god to amass more power for himself in order to rewrite reality to suit his whims, because of course it was. But the Justice League had their reasons for needing him too, and were ready when the time came. Well, as ready as you can be when you're going up against Darkseid and you have an inconvenient lack of Superman on your side, but hey, it all worked out in the end. Number 2. His original name was Prince Xeus. Like I said in a previous entry, it's kinda weird to go around calling yourself Darkseid before you get the reputation that warrants such a pretentious moniker. So it stands to reason that Darkseid was once known by a different name. Xeus. Xeus? I don't know. That's his name. Xeus was the youngest son of the previous ruler of Apokolips, alongside his more peaceful brother Drax. A naturally evil nature combined with the humiliation of living in the shadow of a pacifist pushed Darkseid to sabotage his brother at every single turn, eventually overpowering him and stripping him of the Omega Force, the cosmic force given to rulers of Apokolips. With this new power, he gave himself a new name, Darkseid. Everything else just kinda fell into place for him after that, as things tend to do when you're an all-powerful cosmic being. Darkseid now rules Apokolips, where he is seen as both their eternal king and their all-powerful god. Just one problem with that though. Number 1. He cannot truly be killed. Darkseid, despite the name of the property he actually hails from, is not an actual capital G god. DC Comics are very clear on the distinction between the new gods and the actual gods, but that doesn't mean that Darkseid is 100% mortal either. The biggest thing Darkseid has going for him, bar none, is the fact that he cannot ever be truly killed. Even if Superman gets over his whole no-killing policy and takes out Darkseid, even if New Genesis builds their own Death Star and blows Apokolips into space dust, it will not matter. You take out every one of Darkseid's cronies, but the man himself is not truly physical. His body is merely an avatar, a physical embodiment of the Omega Force. Xeus left the physical plane behind when he became one with the Omega Force, and Darkseid is just that form given shape. And those were 10 things you probably didn't know about Darkseid. Know of any other cool facts about the Dark Despot? Post them down in the comments below, drop the video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more so you don't miss their upload. I've been Ewan, I hope you're all having a hot new god summer, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye!